We continue from yesterday's class. What we discussed that the limitation of electrical interconnect can be complemented by optical interconnect. And also as a silicon on insulator substrate, optical quality as well as optical grade as well as electronic grade, SOI, so-called silicon on insulator wafer available, then so there is a possibility or chance or technology could be useful for co-integration of electronics and photonics. Okay, so that is what yesterday we discussed. Now I want to, because electronics part is well known in silicon, now I want to discuss a bit about how silicon photonics came into picture and what is the background history and how it is evolved. And so like electronics integrated circuit, people were demonstrating earlier on bulk silicon, and due to some problem people moved to silicon on insulator. Still bulk silicon is also still being used, but silicon on insulator also being used for certain applications, particularly for digital applications. Silicon on insulators are very good. And similarly for photonics purpose, it was also started with a bulk silicon. First it was tried to demonstrate optical waveguide. As I mentioned earlier, that if the electromagnetic wave or light or photon of light, the energy of a photon of light wave, if it is smaller than the band gap, then that material can be considered as a, even if it is semiconductor, that can be considered as a, if it is undoped, it's a dielectric for that electromagnetic, transparent I mean to say. So particularly if electromagnetic wave with wavelength more than 1.1 micrometer, that means the photon energy is 1.12 electron volt. If you can calculate h nu, hc by lambda, then if that energy is less than 1.12 electron volt, which is the band gap of silicon, then that wavelength can be transparent. So fortunately our fiber optic communication started with 1.310 micrometer wavelength, which is so-called O band. That was very popular because optical fiber, glass fibers are basically dispersionless, but because of some other constraint and sources, amplifier, and some absorption, OH molecular absorption, so people move to third communication window 1550 nanometer. So both the band actually transparent to silicon. That is what I mean to say. So for real, so that means it is highly possible that waveguide can be designed, fabricated in silicon, in bulk silicon. First it was tried in 1985, and that was actually Richard Sorev and some Lorenzo. That's the first so-called silicon waveguide was demonstrated in this paper. That is about just one page paper, 1.5 page paper published in Electronics Later in 1985, so about 35 years ago. So what was that? You take a silicon substrate, you see that is actually some N star, means actually heavily doped, N plus doping. So donor concentration is in the order of 3 into 10 to the power 19. So normally silicon atomic concentration is in the order of 3 into 10 to the 25. So if you can somehow dope N-type dopant, for example, it can be say phosphorus dopant 3 into 10 to the power 19. That is actually we call it is almost a heavily doped substrate. So you take with heavily doped silicon, and in the top layer you epitaxially grow silicon layer. That method's already available. and with little bit lower concentration of silicon dopant. That is actually about 10 to the power 14, 9 into 10 to the power 14. And that thickness is, you can just consider here, is about 7 micrometer here. They consider that time. And if you make this type of ridge structure, both sides you are just a little bit etching, removing here. So it is called so-called reeve structure, reeve configuration. So then what happens? Light or electromagnetic wave having wavelength transparent to the silicon crystal, that will be confined as a guided mode. Okay, like this. This is a elliptical circle, is just schematically shown that light will be confined. So light energy can propagate vertical direction. So this is the cross section. It can propagate with a field distribution or intensity distribution will be looking like that. And that is sometimes it is called also channel waveguide region. Okay. So how that is happening, you know, the principle is very simple. So you see, when you are doping into silicon, so normally, if you know semiconductor, if you dope, that means N-type doping means a lot of electrons will be available in the conduction band. So it will become conducting. So without doping, normally it is so-called intrinsic, and so-called it is non-conducting. It should be non-conducting. Current will not flow in normal cases. It is intrinsic things. So with respect to this heavily doped silicon, if you consider the top layer, that is relatively intrinsic. So dopant concentration is 10 to the power 14. So that means conductivity is relatively lower in this layer. So you know electromagnetic wave, if you have studied the electromagnetic theory, then propagating in a material medium, so the electromagnetic will be lossy if conductivity is high. And electromagnetic will be transparent. It will transmit without any, even though band gap is smaller, photon energy is smaller than the band gap. But if it is conducting material, that means a lot of free carriers are there either in the conduction band or valence band. That will actually contributes to some kind of loss, because sigma contributes to alpha if you see the electromagnetic wave propagation in a material medium. So that means we created, or I should not say we, these people created this type of low conducting layer just to minimize the loss. Okay, because sigma is lower. That is one thing. And another thing is that, you know, when carrier concentration is lower, that means, or if you dope semiconductor, while increasing its conductivity, one more thing happens also. What is that? That is actually relaxation of dielectric constant. So dielectric constant, you know, epsilon 0, epsilon inside material medium, epsilon 0 times epsilon r. Epsilon r is the dielectric constant. Okay, that is a so-called permittivity. Epsilon equal to epsilon 0 times epsilon r. Epsilon r is the dielectric constant. So this dielectric constant will be higher when conductivity, free electrons, free carrier is less. So when dopant is there, that means you are a little bit relaxing the dielectric constant. Okay, relaxing dielectric constant means you are actually reducing dielectric constant. So if dielectric constant reduces, means square root of dielectric constant is normally it is a refractive index. So that means lower refractive index. Lower dopant means lower refractive index. So besides lower sigma, you also have lower refractive index. So that means if you just simply consider this 7 micrometer layer of silicon having lower refractive index, you can consider top layer is air, bottom layer is a little bit higher refractive index because, lower refractive index because the dopant is there. So here dopant is there, lower refractive index, and dopant less, higher refractive index. Okay, so higher refractive index region, that means you can get that top layer air, refractive index is 1, and this is an intrinsic layer where refractive index is slightly higher, and dopant is there, 10 to the power 19, refractive index is lower. So that means the 7 micrometer layer, you can assume that can be used as a planar waveguide, one-dimensional waveguide. That means light can confine in vertical direction. Vertical direction, you can consider something like a quantum well for photon. Okay, it will be confined. But if you make this type of structure, this reef type of structure, then you see this can be called as a slab region. This side 4.2 micrometer, both sides slab region, and middle region is 7 micrometer height. So because of the height difference, okay, because of the height difference, if you try to see in this region 3-layer system, air and a little bit intrinsic region, and then semiconducting region, that means a conducting region. So these 3-layer, if you just think of what is the effective dielectric constant, what is the effective dielectric constant or effective refractive index? Because of the 3-medium system, that means air and layer of 4.2 micrometer silicon with lower doping, and then substrate in the bottom. If these 3 medium, if you just try to calculate effective dielectric constant, effective dielectric constant or effective refractive index, it will be lower compared to the central region, because height of this intrinsic region is higher here. So effective index will be higher in this region, and effective index will be lower in this region, lower and lower. That means lateral direction, if I consider, you can see another type of little bit lower though, so, because of the height difference, you see another type of quantum well also in this direction, quantum well for photon in the lateral direction. That means effective index is lower, higher, lower. So this direction also you can assume that some kind of confinement can be achieved.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. You are saying that here quantum well. So you are analyzing basically refractive index with potential.
Yes.
And okay, sir. And another, sir, what does sir 111 denote there? TPL1 wafer.
Where it is? 111 or 111. Yeah. Ah, okay. So that is wafer, crystallographic orientation. So if you see any solid state physics book, crystallographic structure, because silicon is actually cubic crystal. That actually it is FCC cubic crystal. So depending on the orientation, you can actually arrangement of atoms. There are some kind of terms or definition is there called Miller indices. So depending on that, you can find out with reference to the crystallographic arrangement, atomic orientation, you can actually define different direction with those indices. 3 indices normally it is used called HKL. Okay, this is a certain direction. That means vertical 111 means vertical direction is 111 direction according to the Miller indices. That I think I will not concentrate much on this because those are actually different solid state physics things. Here you just consider that this is the crystallographic orientation. They have used this one. You can use 100 also. For optical things, I think that does not matter much. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Then my question is that silicon wafer is cutted along one direction?
Yes. Yes. It's a surface. So vertical direction, that is actually one direction. It is. It's a cut. Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. So what is your name? I can't see you.
Rishabh.
Okay, Rishabh. Very good, Rishabh. Okay, so now you see, so it is something like that. You can get a kind of a core region in this here, and light can be confined here as a guided mode. Normally, we can define this guided mode, this profile, everything completely from Maxwell's equation, solution from the Maxwell's equation. We don't need to bother about quantum well, all those type of things, but it is analogy. Sometimes if you see, this analogy helps to understand also, because you will be sometimes using heterostructure, etc. There, this quantum well concept will come back again and again. So that's why it's, but in the beginning, we'll be just discussing through the Maxwell's equation, the theory, guided mode, etc. Everything we will understand through Maxwell's equation. Okay. So, and total internal reflection, maybe in a vague way, you can just say that lower refractive index, higher refractive index, lower refractive index. So anything here try to escape, there is a possibility that there will be a total internal reflection in the lateral direction as well as vertical direction. So it will be confined in 2 dimensions, and 3rd dimension it can propagate. That is actually allowed, free. That direction it is continuous, no refractive index thing. As long as this cross section is there, light can be confined. And if you see, they designed such dimension. If you see, width is 10 micron and height is 7 micron. And if it's some electric field is confined, light electromagnetic wave is confined here, the shape will be roughly around 7 micron by 10 micron. So that size actually is actually equivalent to standard single mode fiber. So light mode, single mode fiber, for example, single mode fiber, the core size in the order of 10 micron, where a higher refractive index is there. Okay, so that is why they consider so that light can be coupled directly from the fiber to the waveguide without much difference in mode mismatch. Because if there is a mismatch in mode size, then there will be coupling losses. So they try to design accordingly. So that was the yes.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before you
what is your name?
Diptasri, sir.
Diptasri, tell me. Yeah.
Yes, sir. First, you compared the diffractive index, like here and this, like intrinsic and that doped region. But what about the lateral region? You said that effective index.
Yes.
What is effective index?
That is what I tried to explain a bit. So if you see, kind of, normally there is a series of resistance. Okay. Then you, what is the equivalent resistance? You know, if R1, R2, R3, then R1 plus R2 plus R3.
Yes.
And if they are connected in parallel, normally, you know, their equivalent resistance will be 1 over R1, 1 by R1. So the parallel combination is there. So here, if you consider this system, it is a 3 different system. You see, in the top, there is air. And then bottom, there is a 4.2 micron of silicon with lower conductivity. And then bottom, it is higher conductivity. So their dielectric constants are different. So if any electromagnetic wave, if it is hitting in the surface, it will see 3 layers. And middle layer is different thickness. So if you try to find out what is the effective or equivalent dielectric constant as a whole, or average dielectric constant, that is actually, one can call that as a effective medium theory. Okay. So there are 3 medium, and a beam of electromagnetic wave is hitting on the surface. What would be the average dielectric constant? Instead of considering there are 3 different regions. So if you just try to do that. So that is one way of explanation. Okay. So that is how we can see that there is a effective dielectric constant will be lower here, meaning the effective refractive index will be lower, and here effective refractive index will be higher. So that is how things. Later on we will discuss in details how that is actually differ. Okay, this is just to understand at the beginning, introduction. This is introductory class. I think that's what I think. All right. So this is the first silicon waveguide was demonstrated, and in 1985. And not only a demonstration of the waveguide, they also fabricated some structure like this. You see one waveguide and another waveguide that is like a crossing, X-like structure. So one waveguide is there as if another waveguide is just crossing. So if you launch, here it is shown 1.3 micrometer optical input. That means wavelength of 1.310 micrometer. That is the second communication window. If you are launching here, light will be coupled, and after coming here it will see some kind of, as long as this cross section is maintained, it will propagate like a mode. Now in the crossing region, a little bit disturbance is there. So perturbation, it will assume like it is a part of dielectric constant there. So structure is different. So in that case, if they are symmetric, you can actually have 2 different beam going in 2 different direction. So that is how power splitter also demonstrated. Okay. And the left side, it is shown that in silicon particularly, if it is a dopant concentration 10 to the power 18 to 10 to the power 20 it is shown. And y-axis is shown how much refractive index change can take place. So if you see around 10 to the power 19, that is what here it is shown, 10 to the power 19, you see refractive index is 10 to the power minus 2. If you recollect that our proposal of integrated optics by A.C. Miller, I have discussed in the last class, that if you can make a refractive index change of 10 to the power minus 2 to 10 to the power minus 3 over a cross section of 10 micrometer, then that is sufficient for a waveguide. So that means 10 to the power 19 doping. Here doping means actually you are reducing the refractive index of that order. 10 to the power minus 2 order you are reducing here. So that means if you compare these two layers, the upper layer refractive index is 10 to the power minus 2 higher and lower is 10 to the power minus 2 lower. Okay. So doping here actually you are not to create the waveguide core, but to create the waveguide cladding. So that is the difference. So as you keep on increase, that one is p-type, another is n-type. Both p-type semiconductor and n-type semiconductor, that means if you increase your dopant concentration, refractive index will drop. And p-type and n-type, they will be showing some different type of results, because you know there's because this conductivity, etc., that involves of the effective mass. So effective mass of hole and effective mass of electrons are different. So that's why the corresponding refractive index change also will be different. For same level of concentration for p-type and n-type, refractive index will be slightly different. That is actually they calculated, and that calculation was also very classical way and little bit semi-empirical way they calculated using Drude model. Drude model is just for transport theory. They have used that scattering theory, electron scattering, all those type of things they considered, and they tried to find out what is the dielectric constant change can happen, and from that they derive this thing. So that was the first breakthrough result of silicon waveguide. Before that, people never thought that silicon can be used for a waveguide, because if you see normal silicon, normally you see gray color, it's as if it is just not possible for visible light. So when 1980s, the fiber optic communications, everything was evolving. So communication wavelength shifted from 850 nanometer. Initially, the first generation communication wavelength was 850 nanometer, and then second generation 1310 O band, and then 1550 nanometer. Once it moved to 1310 nanometer, then people thought that why not silicon then for integrated optics purpose. So that is how it started. Okay. Now, next thing. So it was demonstrated in 1985 that you can have a waveguide, you can have a power splitter, that is fine. What is next thing? So next thing is that modulator. You have to encode electrical data. Information you have to encode. So that encoding things happens through optical modulator. So optical modulator, I explained some way that that modulator can be thermo-optic, that can be electro-optic, that can be acousto-optic. And most of the time, when we consider about communication data, so that data means it is basically electrical signal. If it is on-off, high voltage, low voltage, or a high signal, low signal, that's it. So that is the electrical signal. So it could be interesting to see that if a laser light propagating through a waveguide. Here bulk silicon I have shown here. It can be just simple silicon waveguide, whatever demonstrated earlier in 1985. So light is coupled here, and some electrical data signal. Let us consider that is a 1010 data, just on-off data coming in. One means little bit higher voltage and or higher current, whatever you can consider, and 0 means lower, something like that. And depending on that voltage, you should have some kind of refractive index change. That refractive index change, if it is happening for that instant, the light propagating through that medium, for that instant, it will see different refractive index. So momentarily, it will see some different phase velocity or group velocity also. Eventually, it will happen. So that thing will come as your on-off data come. Your data phase, it will be modulated in terms of phase modulation. It will be phase modulated. Okay. Or if you see electrical signal and data, if you can think of that that electrical signal or current coming, then you can control carrier, for example. say free electron or free holes. So these free electron free holes also contribute conductivity, and that conductivity means it will actually increase the loss. So that means the incoming light will experience some kind of loss. So that also you can think of that whenever 1010 comes, so light intensity can also modulate high to low, high to low, high to low, so and so on. So that will be modulated light also. Okay, so that way actually, if you can control the electron or hole or free carrier by means of your electrical signal or data, that means you can change the material property in two ways. One is sigma, or maybe you can think of that dielectric constant will have two different parts. One can be considered as a real part, another can be considered as an imaginary part. You know, real part of dielectric constant, normally a transparent medium, imaginary part of the dielectric constant is 0. Real part is there, so refractive index is also real, that's why it is a transparent. But whenever your dielectric constant or refractive index is having a real part and imaginary part, and because of this data or electrical signal, you can change both electrical real part as well as imaginary part, then simultaneously you can change the phase as well as your attenuation. You can modulate your refractive index as well as your intensity as well as your phase. So that means you can achieve both intensity modulation and phase modulation. If you control suitably, then you can concentrate only on phase modulation. If you want some kind of just intensity modulation, then it is intensity modulation. So that is the, actually we have seen that carrier actually can change the refractive index in the previous slide. So that is possible. So that thing they tried. And same Soreb and with his another student, Bennett, PhD student, worked together and came out with a very nice paper. And that is a bit of detailed paper in 1987, published in Journal of Quantum Electronics. So about 6 pages paper, and where they demonstrated that how carrier concentration, if you change, the refractive index change will happen. So there are 3 methods they studied actually. This refractive index, one method I just explained, that carrier concentration, that is actually carrier concentration, that is actually lower one I was talking. So if it is electron or hole, if it is 10 to the power 18, then refractive index change is about 1.5 into 10 to the power minus 3 for a wavelength of 1.3 micrometer. But there are other methods, French-Caldis effect and Kerr effect, where actually you need to apply French-Caldis effect. Means it's a band bending structure is there. If time comes, if necessary, we can discuss later. A little bit of physics part is there. And Kerr effect, that is actually nonlinear effect. If you have a very high light intensity, and then you can see some kind of refractive index change also. But those are very weak. You see 10 to the minus 5, 10 to the minus 6. So those are not suitable for your phase modulation or absorption, whatever. So this charge carrier concentration control is was found to be the best actually for silicon. And some refractive index change as a function of wavelength. You can see that the different concentration level it is shown. If you want, I think it would be, if you download this one, I think you can read and you can get a little more physics part and how it is happening, everything you can get there. I will not go much detail on that. All right, so that means waveguide possible and modulator possible. And next thing is that I will come later. Detector, it is always possible. You know, silicon band gap is about 1.12 electron volt. So obviously, if you are using, suppose 1.3 micrometer wavelength. So if you use 1.3 micrometer wavelength, and if you try to design a photodiode in silicon, which can detect 1.3 micrometer, that is not possible, because silicon diode, if you fabricate photodiode, the band gap actually that controls the which wavelength it will absorb. If you are using 1.3 micron for transparency purpose, and you cannot use also that 1.3 micron for absorption purpose also. So it can be, silicon can be a good photodetector for visible region or less than 1.12 micrometer wavelength, but not for 1.3 micrometer or 1.5 micrometer wavelength. Second generation wavelength and communication wavelength and third generation communication wavelength is not possible. So, but thing is that it was actually possible. You know, silicon band gap is 1.12 electron volt, and germanium band gap is about 0.7 electron volt. So if you make a silicon germanium alloy, that is possible. CMOS technology allows that. In that case, some fraction of silicon atoms will be there, some fraction of germanium, and then you are creating alloy. The band gap will be then, you can actually get from 0.7 to 1.12 in between. So 0.7 is the germanium and 0.12 is the silicon. If you make combination, that means you can, depending on the ratio of the alloy you are creating, fabricating, so you can actually engineer the band gap. So controlling that band gap, you can actually fabricate your photodetector also, photodiode, which can actually useful for 1.3 micrometer wavelength as well as 1.5 micrometer wavelength. So that is possible for photodetector. That means if you want to have your simple electrical interconnect, sorry, optical interconnect, you need to convert your electrical signal into optical signal. Modulator can be done. And demodulator means you need a photodetector. So photodetector will convert back your optical signal into electrical signal. That is possible. And waveguide also possible. So these three important thing was demonstrated by Sorev. Actually, that is what that is why Sorev is we call Sorev as a father of silicon photonics. Unless and until this research study was happened, one could not imagine that this silicon photonics and that could do so much miracle these days today. And only problem is the laser. So people are still fighting how to integrate laser in silicon or how to modify that thing. Some breakthrough result comes and next day it is said that okay, some this problem or that problem. So till today people are thinking off-chip laser. But other than that, all other components already visualized, realized in silicon. I will discuss that how it is evolved in course of time. So this is 1985, 87 modulator, and this is 1993. He came back again to write a review paper, and that is actually proceedings of IEEE. So this proceedings of IEEE, you know, anything you publish here, that means that has some kind of industrial impact. So within that 8 years, a lot of research happened as such that people could go ahead and dare to think about some kind of product for different type of applications purpose. And that's why he came back on 1993 and wrote one review paper, and he proposed that in fact it is possible to have a optoelectronic chip that is silicon based called super chip. And this super chip means it's kind of you can get multi-functions. One chip you can get different type of functional output. So he proposed that yes, it can be useful for some kind of switching purpose. And B, here it is shown that you can use silicon photonics for biomedical application purpose. So you can have a microfluidic circuit as well as a waveguide circuit, so that you can read out as an optical signal, and you can demonstrate a biomedical chip as well. And this is a super chip actually, where you can have optical fiber input, output, BiCMOS ICs, optical waveguide, electro-optic modulator, photodiode, and integrated V groove where fiber, all the single mode fiber can come, and V groove you can actually etch out in the substrate, and then fiber can come inside, and you can launch the fiber laser here. And all this HBT, high electron mobility transistors, MOSFET, all those type of thing. Laser diode, you can just maybe flip chip bonding, etc. you can do. And entire lab actually, all the circuit, all components, all photonics and electronics component can be integrated together. That is how super chip was proposed. And you know, this is since silicon wafer is also available. So VLSI technology, CMOS technology. So it is showing that this region will be VLSI, this region will be VLSI, large scale integrated circuit, electronic circuit. VLSI means electronic circuit. And then you can have all these cross parallel lines, they are optical waveguides. So you can actually wafer scale manufacturing fabrication is possible. So that was in 1993, hardly about 27 years ago. Okay. So now let's move to, So all those things was happening considering bulk silicon. That time electronics was also being manufactured, ICs were being manufactured in bulk silicon. And as I said that slowly electronics industry was moving to silicon on insulator. That is what vertical direction, if you see, substrate and buried oxide, so-called box, and then top silicon will be there. This is actually silicon layer. Normally hundreds of nanometer you need for electronic devices, and that is called silicon on insulator. This layer actually called SOI. When you say silicon on insulator, means this layer, silicon on insulator, because insulator is box, buried oxide, and this is substrate. The substrate is just for giving strength, handling purpose, etc. But ultimately, this device layer is used for different type of electronic devices. IBM, AMD, Freescale, Intel, all those type of even those who are having own foundry, and some fabless companies also started designing electronics with this silicon on insulator. And then you see people started thinking that along with the electronics, you can also integrate all this photonics component here mentioned. You see the same type of this active silicon. This is a transistor. This is actually so-called modulator. So this is modulator. This is waveguide, and this is photodetector. All those type of thing you can make. So all this is written here: transistor, waveguide, phase modulator, photo detector, everything can be fabricated. So one important thing is that if you use this thing, same technology flow. Normally for any integrated circuit, you know, there are 270 to 290 process steps are there. So huge foundry, that big machines will be there, all the automation, everything will be there, and big wafers will go through at least 270 to 290 process steps. Starting from wafer, you just load your wafer. Then when it is cheap, as a chip, it is coming out of foundry, there are at least 275 process steps are there. So all these process steps are standardized in a given foundry. So one foundry standardizing in one particular way, another foundry maybe standardizing in different way. All the process steps, all the chemical processing, all this etching, everything will be the metallization, different layer deposition, all those type of things will be there. And people are now trying to think that how you can integrate electronics and photonics using the same process steps, whatever being used in the CMOS industry. So that's why it was a challenge to design photonics components on silicon on insulator, which is compatible to CMOS electronics. So that's why it is frequently it is told that it is CMOS compatible. Okay, your design is fine, it is working fine. Whether it is CMOS compatible or not, that also you have to ensure, because unless and until it is ensured as a CMOS compatible, it cannot be fabricated. It cannot be manufactured as a mass production. You can demonstrate some device in lab, that's fine, but that will not be useful for fabrication or manufacturing purpose or integration purpose. So that is what you should keep in mind whenever you are talking about silicon photonics. You just try to see the technology nodes also, all the technology nodes, how it is advancing and how they can be co-integrated, all those type of things are there. So here some results also I have just taken from some journal here. So here it is shown that how electrical interconnect, the propagation delay, that means delay, earlier we were talking about delay, you can use, if you use silicon waveguide, the delay will be reduced, polymer waveguide, it will be further reduced. So normally silicon waveguide is somewhat intermediate, so you can use, that's one thing. Okay, so now I can come back to, this is an interesting study. So you know, when all this study, everything it's feasible and it is proven to be cost effective, and really academicians in the universities and institutes, they are doing research and they are keeps on saying that okay, it is now is ready to go for manufacturing purpose, industrial production can be possible, etc. Normally, like semiconductor giants, like if you are thinking about Intel, IBM, all those semiconductor giants, they will study first. Okay, let's see whether it is really possible, if we are ready to go for really mass production or industrial productions or not. So what they do, they did a good study in 2004. Intel, I got it from Intel Technology Journal. So what they did, that on chip, if you use, I said earlier that if your interconnect is a little bit longer, where your bandwidth limitation is there for electrical interconnect, so you can convert electrical signal into optical signal and then process optically and back transmit to one location from one location to another location and convert back to electrical. So what length is affordable? If it is a very short distance, that is not economic. So you need to consider up to what length you can use electrical interconnect, and beyond which length you need to think about optical interconnect. So they studied with the existing technology specifications. For example, what is the waveguide loss? And what is the, in 2014, before that, whatever demonstrated waveguide, they studied that, okay, this is the waveguide loss. Okay, this much is the coupling loss if you are using a laser light. And this much is the power required to drive a laser. And this much is the photo detector driving circuit needed. All those energy they calculated, okay, with available all the products that time. And they found that if your electronics chip, that size is about maximum length is about 7. This is a standard chip, microprocessor chip. If you see, that is around 17.6 millimeter. So 17.6 millimeter by 17.6 millimeter. Now it can happen that you want to connect from one corner to another corner, which is actually more than 17.6 millimeter diagonally if you connect. But if you laterally or horizontally if you connect, that is about 17.6 maximum interconnect length. But they calculated that 3 different figure of merits they compare. Delay, that means how fast you can switch, power consumption, and then another thing is that bandwidth density. So bandwidth means density of components, how much for a particular area, how much this many number of components are there. For that, how much bandwidth I am gaining. Because optical circuitry, everything, it needs a little bit larger footprint. Okay, so you have to count that one also, that whenever you are using more area, whether the gain you are having for bandwidth is actually economy or not. So they calculated and they found that year-wise. So year-wise means your technology getting advanced, your waveguide loss may be improving, and your coupling loss may be improving, laser quality, everything getting improved. So up to 2016, they projected what? If you see, this one is the delay. Delay will be economic if you are just this is actually the length, y-axis. So this is 10 to the minus 2. This is 10 to the minus 1, means it is actually 0.1 millimeter. And then this is, no, this is actually 10 millimeter. This is 10 millimeter, which is the, I think this is in centimeter, I guess, normalized length. Normalized length means you are considering 17.6 is equal to 1. 10 to the 0 is 1. Okay, that means you have to just factor what is the length. So if you are, if you want to communicate more than this length, right? This is the point, more than this length, then optical interconnect is the economy. You get advantage in terms of delay. And in terms of, say, bandwidth, this is not so economic. Okay, so that is coming like this. And in terms of power, it is like that. So that means, on an average, if I see that if you are crossing some kind of 5 to 10 millimeter length over the years, you see this is actually 10 to the minus 1. So 10% of this one, 1.7 millimeter, more than 1.2 millimeter if you are crossing. In 2016, for example, if your length is above 2.6, yeah, so about 1.62 millimeter or so, then optical interconnect is the best option. So you can convert electrical to optical and optical to electrical. That would be beneficial. So then some circuitry, everything demonstrated there. I've just shown this integrated circuit used for your what you call that, microwave things. Okay, so now I will just take you through what this is all this done, and people started working. And then since one of the major bottleneck is that silicon laser can be integrated or not, so people till now people are trying that. Okay, lasers are normally require direct band gap semiconductor, that's compound semiconductor, like 3-5 semiconductor platform is required. So they are efficient there. because all the heterostructure, quantum well structure, everything can be easily fabricated, and also laser emission is possible efficiently. So people tried that you fabricate laser with 356 platform, and then you just bond it on the top of your silicon chip, where output will be directly interfaced with the silicon waveguide, so that it will be coupled directly from chip to the waveguide. So that type of thing people try it. It's a huge packaging cost is there, and a lot of challenge in alignment, all those type of things, because you are talking about your alignment in the order of some hundreds of nanometer tolerance. So if you see that actually coupling efficiency for this type of structure, actually it is actually for gap 5 micrometer, it is almost reaching to 60-70% as a function of length it was showing. So as a function of length, so light is being coupled to the waveguide. So that was one alternative solution, that on-chip laser will be there, on-chip photo detector will be there, waveguide modulator, everything will be there. That's a good thing. And this is what how modulators are fabricated. You see, we'll discuss that in details. This is some kind of Mach-Zehnder modulator. Okay, top view. You say input waveguide, you have some kind of Y junction, you split into two halves and comes back and combine them. So one of these arms, you can have this type of structure. You have waveguide, both side p-type doping, n-type doping, intrinsic region guide will be, optical mode will be there. So depending on your data, DC plus AC signal, the phase will be modulated, and depending on the phase modulation, when you are recombining them, your intensity will be modulated intensity, and phase modulation you will be getting there. This is a standard modulator nowadays available in the market also, based on lithium niobate. So those things also can be fabricated, and they demonstrated, and over the years, if you see, there are different type of figure of merits. I'm not going into the details now, because unless and until I discuss those things in details, modulator things, then we will not be able to understand what is V pi, L pi, all those type of things we can discuss later. Okay, modulator, and then also photo detector, also same way technology. It can be silicon germanium, it can be also 3-pipe semiconductor can be bonded. Here one type of structure it is shown, published in 2010 also. I think here also people get efficiency more than 90%, quantum efficiency. Yes, so this is what you get your Intel demonstrated. I think this is a bit older. They got a better version in 2016. I think they've gone to 100 GB, 400 Gbps things. So that time, 2010, they demonstrated, actually, you see, a on-chip transceiver. There are 25 laser, 3-pipe semiconductor laser mounted on series, fixed here, and then they are coupled to the silicon waveguide. So 25 different waveguides. Each of these lasers, they will be actually transmitting laser emission at different wavelengths. They can be designed such that one is 1550 nanometer, another may be 1552 nanometer, another may be 1554 nanometer, and so on. There are standards, ITU channel standard is there. Maybe their spacing is about 1.6 nanometer or 200 gigahertz or something like that. You can have that. So different wavelength will be there. Maybe separation 1 nanometer, 2 nanometer, and so on. And you couple there, and you have a modulator here. So each of these modulator can actually encode your data 40 Gbps, 40 GB per second. So 25 multiplied by 40, so you get 1 terabit per second optical transmitter. So that was actually demonstrated in the lab, and this is a packaged device, and in between this blue color, if you see this fiber, they actually demonstrated and communicated, but that was lab level demonstration. But actual product they launched in 2016. Okay, transceiver. Yeah. So this is another architecture. What is that? This another architecture, I mean to say, on-chip communication, the board level communication. So you have, for example, one microprocessor here, another microprocessor here. Maybe you are mounting on PCB, and then PCB or silicon wafer you can make. In the top you have VLSI chip. They can be fabricated separately and put inside. And then here, this is your silicon platform, where you can have your modulator, a special type of modulator instead of Mach Zehnder modulator. It is micro ring resonators, and demodulators are there. Then you can get electronic data, convert it into optical data, process optically, and then convert here. So short range communication also possible on chip, and that was also demonstrated. That is large scale integrated circuit. For large scale integrated circuit, you are using silicon as a interposer. So you like a PCB board. So you can get some information from electronic chip and communicate to another chip. So on chip level, this is the thing demonstrated. And yeah, so this is now move on to 2012. First time Intel, they have used their IBM 90 nanometer technology node. With that technology node, they demonstrated high-speed modulator. That is what 25 Gbps I was talking. I think 40 Gbps I talking, but here they have shown 25 Gbps. And also wavelength division multiplexing, different channels, they have to multiplex together to launch into a fiber. No? So those type of WDM also they demonstrated. Also photo detector, they demonstrated with a bandwidth of 20 gigahertz, germanium photo detector. And some kind of tuner circuit, Mach Zehnder interferometer. You see these are the actual photograph taken from their device. So these are actually this gold color things they are actually metal things, and these blue color these are actually waveguide, optical waveguides, and these are actually in between they keep something unetched for different technology purpose they use. So these are basically waveguide. Mach Zehnder interferometer, two waveguides are coming marching, and also one is coming. Okay. So I stop here, just concluding this figure. Here, what is that? This is actually the entire silicon wafer, actually fabricated in a foundry, silicon on insulator wafer. So this color things means they are actually fabricated. Different dyes are there, different type of photonics chip circuits are fabricated, and it is shown here. And in this paper also you can download, you can go through it. It is nicely presented that okay, all these things demonstrated individually, that is fine, but ultimately you have to see really you are gaining this advantage or not compared to whatever with the existing technology. And it has been shown that there are plenty of still work has to be done to get complete advantage of silicon photonics, because you need, for example, coupling losses, waveguide losses, theoretically possible, but technology need to be also adjustable for CMOS industry, and also figure of merits should be also compatible, all those type of thing. Okay, I stop there, and later on I will be just discussing a couple more slides in the next class, and some of the device what we have fabricated in IIT Madras, just giving you a glimpse, and then we can move on to actual course theoretical part. Any question?
Sir, I have a request.
Yeah.
Can you please give this whatever presentation?
Will be given. Will be given.
Okay,
will be given. Once it is done, I think maybe I think another half class needed. Whatever the introductory slides I prepared, that I'll be sending you through mail, and it will be uploaded in Moodle. It will be uploaded in the Moodle, and later on I'll be just doing some kind of handwritten theoretical things. So that will be actually also will be uploaded in the Moodle. Okay. Done.
Okay, sir. And sir, any book for this course?
Yeah, I will just mention once this introductory things are over, then I will tell. And mostly not, I will not be concentrated only on one book. But if you want to buy one book, I would suggest you to buy the to understanding all the photonics components, etc. That is a very good book of written by Yariv called Photonics, Optical Communication, something like that. Photonics book of Yariv. You just search, you can find out that's a very nice book. I will be taking some of the theoretical aspects of different type of optical components from that book, and I will take some reference books. So wherever I'm teaching specific thing from any reference other books, I will be just I will let you know. Okay, but this photonics book written by Yariv, that you should have if you are interested to learn a little bit of device level and design aspects, etc. I think that photonics written by Yariv, that is actually perfect.
Okay, sir. I'm asking you just I want to go College Street. That's why I'm going tomorrow College Street to buy book. That's why.
Yeah, probably College Street you may find. I think there are Indian versions are there, Indian editions there. I think 500, 600 rupees. I think it may not be available in College Street, but you can check.
Okay, sir.
Yep.